They're in bowls, and we eat them on the way out. No, it's
All right,
I'll
go with that one.
Is a fully invested and representative.
let's
Yes, sir.
set the stage here. What is your name and spell it?
No, I'll spell it. He says it, I'll spell it.
My name is Harry Kolatz Jr.
And it's spelled Harry. I'm sorry, the last name is spelled, which you probably want, is Kollatz.
Very impressive.
I see it in print a lot.
He's a writer.
That has nothing to do with it. Melville was a worse speller. Good Lord, you have all these large words in it. You have A. What is this A for? Are you grading me?
Yes.
And it,
That's not an A, by the way.
oh, I see. Is that your F?
It was a star. I was
I see.
signifying the passage. This might be important.
Well, only you would know, because I have absolutely no idea.
In their brackets. Bruce Heroic.
Bruce Heroic.
Yeah.
Oh, leading spirit.
Heroic Bruce.
Oh, right. There is that passage. Huh. Maybe we should acquaint everybody with the. I guess the interview. Yeah, we're withholding all of this. I'm sorry to make you sit like this. Jesus.
So did Noni say she was coming?
She did. She called me. She called me especially.
Okay, and said.
And she would be very, 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 very. She is. So I'm sorry to make you all wait. That's why we should be talking about
3 or
this.
4 minutes.
I'm Harry Kolatz Jr. I'm a writer for Richmond Magazine and a friend of Fountain Books. Thank you, Kelly, for inviting us to talk about this novel. I shot Bruce, not Springsteen, not Lee, not Robert But imagine, if you will, as most novels are, an alternative world where instead of the Beatles we have the Keysters, and instead of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, we have, let me see if I can get these, Marshall, Jake, Bruce, and Townsend. But as we all know, with the Beatles, their first drummer was Pete Best, who was deemed not to be the best Pete. And so he was evicted from the band, and much like happens to Vijay Asunder, who is kicked by the Keysters onto his and out of the band, and then he nurses that resentment for about 4 decades until it eclipses his good sense and he commits the ultimate crime against the poor named Bruce. And so we're going to talk about whether Vijay Asunder is actually sane, whether he made all this up, and also the name. Now here's something we didn't know.
Okay.
We found this out in communication with each other through Facebook. Pete Best was actually born in Madras in India.
Which neither of
us
knew that. It's a piece of serendipity
Exactly.
unparalleled in American literature.
Unparalleled in American literature. And so that was enjoyable. But the fact is that he actually refers to it.
He does.
He does refer to being a country I never went to.
Exactly.
But it has that
Which is
name,
very
Vijay.
true.
Yeah, right.
For all of us. Everyone in the novel.
But Pete was actually born there. And so we were talking about how when creating fiction, these things sort of crop up, and sometimes you don't know about them until you're done or till later when you realize that you made connections you weren't even sure you were making. So, so we're going to delve into this world that presents the Keysters, and about why Brett wanted to spend time with this man who's quite obviously deliriously unhappy with his life, and wants to correct a wrong that occurred to him, which he didn't feel he was justified. And he spends a great deal of time figuring out how to deal with it, and ultimately he chooses
To resolve the issue.
So how did this come to you? You said you dropped a novel to start this novel.
I did.
Why? What was it about this particular story that ignited? What possessed you to write this, I should say?
Well, you may have listened to the same program I did. It was an NPR interview with Pete Best, who periodically goes on TV and radio to say, essentially, I'm here. And and he was a very affable person, unusually so. So much so that he could be the poster boy for affability itself. And I thought, there has to be a backstory here. He can't be this well adjusted. Look at what happened to him. look at what he can look back on at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, not what might have been, what might have been. The Beatles didn't realize, I mean, who's actually going to realize that they're going to be the kind of successes the Beatles were, because there were no successes of that sort. It was entirely without precedent. So it is impossible to imagine that Pete Best does not consider, or does not because he's still alive, all of the possibilities, all the missed opportunities, all of the riches, all of the wealth, all of the glory that he missed by a hair, essentially. In fact, he was, according to fairly trustworthy accounts, he was ejected from the band not because he didn't have the talent, but because the chemistry wasn't right. Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles, said, "Man, sort of."
There's a guest appearance in this book under the name of Sir George Villiers, right?
Well, actually,
Is Pufta. He's
no.
No.
You are confounding these people, and I thought you
sorry.
read this book.
I did read the
Let
book.
me
I'm
correct.
conflicted. Please correct me.
Let me correct this man. Brian Epstein, the Epstein character in my book, you only read it once. I have the advantage of you. Is Orbit Peregrine. He's the name. And Sir Robert Villiers, I believe, is the fellow who just died.
Brian Epstein.
You refer to history. You have to. But in creating all of these people, I had to create this alternate universe that was peopled like with folk like these people, but had their own identities. And a lot of novelists, I think Nabokov said that he drove his characters like slaves. I don't do that. I sort of let them do what they want and then dismiss them after I'm tired. And I keep on doing it, and it seems to work reasonably well that way. But I know with a lot of novelists, characters are more conscious creations, more forced into a mold. I cannot do that. In fact, after hearing that interview, it's as if the whole thing materialized, and I just sat down and kind of took dictation. And I realized there's a very dangerous trope embedded in that perception, and I don't want to be too horribly guilty of impersonating the artistic writer to whom all things are given, because I was a kind of a fanatical Beatles fan when I was. In fact, when they broke up, I ceased listening to rock music. I started listening to jazz and classical stuff because it's as if they had betrayed me. They had smashed an era. They had somehow created this monument and destroyed it before my very eyes. They affected me quite profoundly, even though I was just a kid. I think when they broke up, I was 13 years old or 14 years old or something. And yet I guess the magic, if you will, of writing fiction is that these things stick around, and they assume unanticipated forms, like this novel. I'd always wanted to write something about it, but I had absolutely no idea when it would happen or whether it would happen at all. So I feel quite lucky.
Well, you have a line here, and I think it says, "We were already having nostalgia for something no one knew we had outgrown." And that's, at that point, you're talking about the band itself, which is kind of breaking up at this point. You're describing, but seems to be, is that? No?
Somebody.
It's somebody, and
Yeah,
we're glad to have them.
Yes, we are.
There's a certain resonance to what you're talking about, the fact that you were feeling nostalgic for this era that the Beatles came and displaced in a way.
Or defined and then decided to suddenly abandon.
Yeah, and walk away from
Exactly.
it.
Once again, I think a lot of people felt similarly about that, so I just walked off in a huff. and decided not to think about them again, and didn't for a long, long, long time. It was that that girlfriend you just can't put out of your head forever, and will not speak her name and cannot endure. Mary? So I had wanted to sort of recycle it in this way, but nothing. In fact, I tried doing it, and you cannot try. You cannot try as a writer. It does not work. You can't unless there's money. In fact, I was thinking, what if somebody actually reads this? And I was driving down the highway and having these unacceptable fantasies about my career. And I thought, what if somebody offers me a lot of money to write a sequel? I'll do it. And but how? It does not matter. The money is on the table.
Well, let's talk about
Yes, sir.
let's talk about Vijay and the money he's lost.
Yes. How can we? It's
There's a
incalculable.
scene, and it was kind of shocking to me, where he goes to address the man who killed his father by accident, Vijay's father, and he's less upset about that than the fact that he was ejected from the Keysters. He has basically a psychotic breakdown
He
right
does.
in front of the guy.
He does. With these very decent English people. His father had been killed in an accident, and his mother, a rather batty lady, decides that now is the time that we must expiate for this crime. So not we must. We're fortunately innocent in this regard. We will go to the perpetrators and we will tell them we forgive them. So he is assigned. Vijay is a teenager. The day he is ejected from this band, is assigned to go to this place that smells like boiled cabbage, and tell the man who killed his father that he forgives him. But in the midst of attempting to do so, he realizes, it dawns on him what has just happened to him, this turning point in his life. And as the people are, the clueless husband and wife are trying to process this event and reliving the horror of having killed someone, they look at him and said, "You're not really talking about this at all, are you?" He said, "No, I just stayed in that bed." And then he sort of, that's a fair rendering in a few words.
He's a shattered psychology. He just doesn't.
Right.
He can't piece himself back together after what has happened to
And
him.
he's
it
rather
just gets
young.
worse because they get hugely famous after he leaves.
And he
after he's
has a
left.
good sense of it, a fairly good sense of it. Oh, the other thing in this, he while he's over there, he tries to induce the old fellow. He says, the fellow says, "Please, let me do anything for you. I will, within reason, of course." So he says, "All right, I want you to go to the place where they're playing with the Dead Falcon or something, and I want you to heckle. I want you to ridicule," and the band is called what they were called the Keysters then. So I want you to go out there and humiliate them if you can. So that naturally, these very proper English people were somewhat disconcerted by this request and didn't even understand the nature of
They
it.
get rather scared of him.
Yes, I think ultimately they're terrified
kind
of this.
Like, okay, get out.
Yes, right.
So this is how we kind of get a glimpse into Vijay's mental
Mentality.
state. That he's just not going to get over this. He tries to piece his life back together in one fashion or another, make connections and relationships, and it's all just overshadowed by the fact that the Keysters become essentially the defining mode of popular culture and become extraordinarily wealthy. And Bruce becomes this great humanitarian, and it really annoys him.
It does.
Your protagonist.
It's rubbing salt in the wound.
Right.
If at least he could be some sort of reprobate. Yes.
He most resolutely does not become a jerk.
No, he does not.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the novel, even though I didn't realize at the time, is sort of arranged to provide a series of wake-up calls and humiliations for this character, or challenges, if you will. that, okay, here you're reminded of your lot at the age of 30. I'm not taking it well. At the age of 40, I'm not doing any better. At the age of 50, oh God. And so you would think that the human psyche is resilient enough to be able to contain this kind of disappointment. But no, even the fifth decade is, I want revenge. And, you know, a lot of us who are disappointed think, well, we have a plan B. You know, we have an alternate reality that we can implement to our satisfaction if we work hard enough and are earnest about it. Thanks, Nody. And so he thought, all right, I'll give it a try. In fact, I'll do it in my own way. So he was a lorry driver for 10 years.
Which Pete Best actually did do. He did drive.
What?
He drove a truck.
Another question. I had no idea.
You didn't know that?
I had no idea. So many parallels. This guy's a good reader.
Yes, Pete Best drove a truck for a while.
Well, he did a lot of jobs. In
Yeah,
fact,
a lot of jobs.
he's a civil servant of some sort right
I
now.
believe he is.
He's a Liverpool bureaucrat,
I think he works in there.
even unto this day. Yeah. So he's moved up in a parallel sort of way. So this fellow gets his quasi-dream job, in his alternate reality as an antique dealer, at which he has a very surprising aptitude. He's very good. He's almost immediately accepted. He takes an aptitude test. I just remembered that. I forgot about it. He takes an aptitude test, and he's elevated to the enviable position that eludes most of his colleagues, and he's set. But eventually it begins to wear on him. And he thinks, well, yes, I'm good at this. But, in fact, in an earlier humiliation that is set up for him is when he is an Antiques Roadshow style expert. And people, somebody recognized, saying, that's you! Some American out on this English lawn saying that's you. And of course, nobody can quite get a handle on who he is. But she is so obnoxiously persistent that she manages to attract all of this attention around him. And he says, oh God, this is the measure of my life. Having this American harpy descend upon me and identify me, out me, if you will, amidst all of these English people who just want to know something about bisque and porcelain. So he lines them up and signs their autograph. I think a very, it shows a certain adaptability that he lacks later on in the novel, wouldn't you say?
Well, and you, the Keister, sort of following the path of actuarial eventualities through happenstance and
That's correct.
health problems, and so it seems that maybe all of this resentment and building up the title, but won't happen.
Yes.
But in fact, I don't think I'm giving anything away, as this is the title.
There are no
of the book.
spoilers in this book.
That he does in fact choose to take out the last remaining, most successful, the fine man and a great humanitarian.
But to go easy on him just for a second, had the Brian Epstein character survived, he would have killed him first. So,
That's true. He was
as you say, actuarially, all of these deaths are duly noted.
Yes, in detail.
Exactly. With some relish, I would say.
Yes, he does.
In fact, it's
particularly the most random and boring of them.
that's right. But the last death
relish.
is the trigger, I think, the Townsend. I just read that. I wouldn't know this so well if I just didn't. I was trying. Incidentally, what I wanted
I had
to.
this discussion with you. I want to interrupt for a second.
Please go ahead.
I'm debating whether he actually does shoot Bruce. To myself, you say he does. I'm not sure he does because I'm just wondering if he's just crazy and that he is creating this in his own brain. But if you think he shoots him, he shoots him.
Don't treat me like that. That was condescending.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, I just. But no. I mean, you deliberately chose not to actually have him planning it.
Right.
He admits to it. There's this newscast at the very beginning, but you don't actually have the deed.
Okay, it could
That's
very
kind
well.
of a spoiler.
Well,
Maybe a little bit.
there's this great great passage in that was rendered that was rendered in a movie, the Garp movie, and
yes. World According to.
The World According to Garp, and Irving described the climactic incident where the head is broken and all sorts of other things happen, and he described it in this very dreamlike prose.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, gosh, if I ever get a chance, if I can ever do this again, I wanted some of those confessions or some of those imaginings to have that it may be possible quality, but I perhaps just dreaming it up.
Right. Yeah.
So there is some ambiguity there, no
Right,
doubt about it.
right.
And anybody who reads it may choose to believe that the
Choose your own
shooting
adventure,
exactly,
so to speak,
or his.
or his or her adventure.
No, I always write like that. The gestation periods are long. So I suppose if you were to account for all the days, months, and years that I was unconsciously mulling over this, I suppose you would have a rather staggering preparation. But when in fact, I would not write if I knew what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think you're the same way. There's something about whatever zone you're permitted when you write. When the right brain has pushed the left brain aside or put him in a box, told him to behave, stop being a critic.
It's tough.
Or sometimes, which another reason why I can't stop. I realize that there's a certain intensity that has to be maintained, and as long as
to do for the length of a novel to keep that focus, intensity.
I was very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing else to do. I had no job.
Oh, me.
I've never had a job, so I don't even know how to do that. But I was writing another novel, so I was already sort of conditioned to be writing novels, and I was writing other stuff as well. So it was as if I was sort of primed to do this. Also, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's sort of where all of this, my own infatuation for the group, originated. And in fact, I was within a block of where all of that happened. My mother's house was almost adjacent to the house I grew up in. So there was all of those spooky connections as well. And I thought, well, hey, so I thought, I'm in an absolutely ideal. Let us do this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I simply took advantage of a situation that was almost perfect to begin with. Mm-hmm. You don't get. They call them gifts because you don't get them all the time.
That's right.
And that's what I got.
Right.
This uninterrupted stint. And it happened very quickly. Some of them, I know some people, this surprised me. When we were talking about various processes, I started reading about them. And Joyce Carey, a novelist I like very much, whose trilogy, The Horse's Mouth, is probably the best known, but there were two other books. He said that he was able to write the beginning and the end, and he just filled the rest in.
Some people can work that way.
He did it real good, though. In fact, some of his
it's good to have the ending. That some people don't even.
But how are you going to expand it? I mean, it's expandable to what expanded? He expanded it very lustily. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Horse's Mouth is a considerable achievement, and the others are even bigger.
Yeah.
So if he did that sort of process, I thought, boy, what a slog to get from point A to point X or whatever it is on the alphabet. I thought, I can't possibly do that. And besides, I sort of want to be stumbling around and have all of these people waylay me as I go, because I had absolutely no idea what would happen. I never do.
Right.
It's a rather risky proposition.
So their biographies just sort of introduced themselves to you as you were working through. You maybe had some kind of.
Well, you do reading over the years, and of course.
Plus, you had a real life cognates maybe that you could draw from.
Well, also I'm a bit of a what? An ambivalent Anglophile.
Nice.
So I had all of that in my head as well,
Right.
and liked it very much. And that's another thing on the bucket list. I wanted to write sort of a British novel because I like British writers so much. In fact, I don't think there's a better prose stylist than what's his face who wrote Flaubert's Parrot, who's just written a new Julian Barnes.
Julian Barnes.
Oh my God, he's just staggeringly good. I thought if I could just do something that would not be embarrassing if it were contiguous or even yards or leagues apart from this person's prose, I'd be very satisfied.
Right.
That was another motivation.
Well, I was wondering if there's people
Open it up for questions?
Open it up for questions, or
I do.
I was wondering.
I don't have songs.
You don't. You have lyrics.
I would, yeah.
But I was wondering if you were thinking of Beatles music
Oh, I
to
was.
attach them to the lyrics, and whether.
No, just something that would sound similar.
Okay.
Once I did it, although I had certain. There's a. Where's that? Harry, you could probably tell me where this
Well, there's one in
is.
particular,
No, there's one I really like because it's a poem. No, damn it. See, I just wish I knew this book like you did. Ah, here we are. Okay, now this is more of a poem. And so I'll read this to you. Harry, you read it. Here,
What?
look.
No,
Yeah, you read it. It's 176.
176.
I'd love for you to read this.
This penile swamp one?
Yes.
Oh.
He hates it. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yes.
You like
yeah.
it. You like it. This was
set
very
it up.
vaguely inspired by the I Am the Walrus genre of John Lennon's songs. So this is a Jakean invention. Jake in the book.
So, foundling hospitals seek men of fallen grace. We stalk the rotting deer. The rutting deer.
The Rutting Deer.
Oh, there we go. Well, my arms are too short. We stalk the rutting deer, sporting a kindly fawn. Come on, come all if you can stand the beat of of the weather that cushions a leper's feet. Oh, bonny suns thrown out for kindling. I have to imagine there's a backbeat here. Oh, intractable wasteland that gives us hope, that our virtues may strangle us without a rope, and sing of our testicles descending. Former descending, now ending, yes, former, forever bollocks, the parson's yoke. So,
Well, I just remembered and thought, well, this would be a good little bit to put in here, and I did.
and then there's the one that begins, take the low road in and the high road out.
Right, that was
Sort
an anti-war song.
of- Okay, right, yeah.
Right.
And the fighting for the American way or something like
Right,
that.
that's
yeah.
good. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And
You do need to write this review.
so, but that is, it's an anti-war song. And it seems kind of, the protagonist takes that particular line to heart in terms he thinks he's sort of better than they are because he's chosen to be honest in this one fatal moment. Maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but that does precipitate the breakup between him. He does have a girlfriend here, by the
Oh,
way. And
yes, poor
a
guy.
friend of mine was very disappointed. A friend who shall not be mentioned or even looked at said that he was disappointed when the romance dissolved in the book, and I thought, well, I was too. You know, there's this flowering of possibility and hope, and it's dashed very quickly and handily as well.
He's a difficult person to
He,
live with.
yes,
I
he
imagine.
is.
Seems to be. Well, this character in particular.
Yeah,
'Cause he's harboring this huge grudge.
he is, and it doesn't go over well at the restaurant or in the bedroom ultimately, or really any place where people are most comfortable in intimate relationships. And so it eventually finds its way to him, and it poisons everything. And can we say something that would maybe stimulate people to buy this book? And
Well, it seems like, well, you know, there's a conversation, by the way, that Abed and he have towards the end in the restaurant. It kind of almost seems like you're trying to or they're trying to come to sum up this whole relationship that they have with themselves and the Keisters, because he's always thought Ovid was after him.
Well, he was after him in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Ovid, I did do something that could not be done in the 60s, which was explore the Epstein character's homosexuality. So, and that had something to do with the genesis of this character getting in the band, because the Peregrine character was already a fairly savvy promoter and saw the narrator singing with another band, and he recruited him. He knew why he had been ejected and harbored this world-class resentment, which Peregrine in this particular colloquy attempts to address and possibly minimize. But there really wasn't a whole lot of amenability on the part of Asunder in that. In fact, it's kind of interesting that there's this great Somerset Maugham story about a pianist you knew didn't cut the mustard. He wasn't good enough. He hoped fervently to achieve the status of the people he admired, but couldn't. And so, but a friend of his was able to get a woman who was on the tour to listen to him. So for him, this was a monumental event. This would be the turning point in a life that could go very well or be eternally disappointing. So the concert pianist, who is between engagements and is rather busy and distracted, says, well, you have some degree of talent, but it's of a pedestrian quality. I really wouldn't suggest that you go on with this. Well, it shattered this man. But for the pianist, she was just waiting for a taxi. So with Peregrine, he said, well, it was just, essentially, it was the line, it's just business.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't fit into my plan. So you had to simply be removed from the picture. No hard feelings. That
Little
you're
does he know.
exactly. Well, he didn't know. In a way, we're all innocent in certain ways. It doesn't really matter how worldly wise we are. We have blind spots, and we can be unintentionally cruel to people because they're in our peripheral vision, and that's precisely what happened with him. He really didn't know. In fact, he was actually aghast when he was confronted with his many transgressions. I mean, and with that day, when he was drummed out of the band, he remembers it at a specific time, 11:47.
Yes, that's the witching hour for him.
Indeed it was. So I wanted to explore that particular quality. That Maugham story has haunted me ever since. That unintentional cruelty that we're all guilty of at one time or another.
Or it's been done to us one way or another.
Indeed, and we've most likely, if we're in the artistic field, we've been victims of it. Time and time again. So, and I wanted to attempt to dramatize that in that particular.
But I think in that.
Once again, we've imposed our own views.
So
Yes.
George Martin was the producer.
He was the producer,
He just
right?
Yeah.
Passed away, right?
He did, yeah.
Is that the Peregrine?
No,
Because it wasn't
No.
Okay, I thought it was George Martin who made.
not really.
Previously.
He was kind of on the receiving end. He got them once they got into the studio.
Okay.
You know, he was
So
sort of like,
Epstein is the guy that's the Peregrine
yeah, mhm.
character.
Yeah, he was sort of the mastermind
He
behind
was
it.
so repulsive in the novel.
He was indeed. I apologize to Epstein's shade, who seemed to be a perfectly decent
But
fellow.
I think you're reading it through the filter of the protagonist,
Yes.
who had much not to like about it.
Yes,
So-
and he's just slightly subjective, let us say.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this narrator is. Would you call him a reliable or unreliable narrator? I suppose that again, that might be something the reader might decide.
Well,
but
if we can all be said to be heroes of our own life, utterly impeccable. But according to everybody else, of course, he maligns the universe. No, he's not reliable at all, because everything is sort of about him. So in that regard, he's a bit of a repulsive character, because he really can't form relationships with other people. because or they're of a short-lived character and he's coaxed into them by others. He doesn't willingly participate. He finds all of these decent people, however, and gets opportunities to perhaps explore the possibility if only I could have been this, or if only this shadow hadn't fallen over my life, I might be able to respond in kind to their to the good turns they've done me. And he almost did with the antique dealer, another very unassuming character who probably thinks everybody is basically good.
Right.
And this fellow is incapable of doing that. You figured that out, didn't you?
So,
Yes.
if you're looking for comparable titles, comparable styles, people that I'm thinking, does this fit in more in a closer to Vonnegut or closer to Nick Hornby, or somewhere in between? Or?
Vonnegut, even though he writes about horrific things,
Sure.
is, I think, a very kindly man. I think he has a certain moral center to him. This fellow lives in a moral vacuum. So it has, I would say Kingsley Amis is the closest writer
Yeah.
to this. I love Kingsley Amis, absolutely. And he got darker and darker and darker. Wonderful stuff. Hard to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blisteringly unforgiving view.
That puts me in a close as a bookseller, kind of like to be able to
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
kind of like this.
describe it.
Yeah, it's him. Go to him first.
Resembles
Him?
this.
Again?
Um,
Any other questions based upon all the prejudicial accounts you've heard of this book?
try not to be too prejudicial. I guess.
No. You're right. You're absolutely right. You know the book better than I do.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No. I
I
would.
spent more time recently with it.
You
perhaps.
have no more time altogether. I'm very slapped.
Now you have. Do you have a couple of other books on the way on the gantry, or
I do. I have totally unlike this. The next book I want to be published, or I hope is published, is a collection of stories about growing up in Memphis, mostly in the suburbs, as a very guileless child who gets involved in all sorts of adventures he would not have planned for himself, and is carried along by them. Some of the stories are fairly long, but it's essentially a collection of stories. And I have another. I think I want to do the book that I had dropped, but have since finished, called Black and White. It's about a Depression era photographer named Ouija, even though he's another fellow in that.
Okay.
Other books.
And let's talk, who's your publisher? How did that happen?
It's called Open Books, and in one of those times when I hope that most writers are familiar with this sensation of having sent out appeals and pleas and messages in bottles to various publishers and agents, and being rejected repeatedly for no good reason according to your own perceptions.
Exactly.
And I thought, well, somebody told me about this publisher, or I read it online, and I thought, oh, I really don't want to do this, but I generally have to do research, and I don't this time. So by God, I will send them this thing. And I heard from him in 2 days. I thought,
Zoom.
it's just unfair. No, but it's terrible, because I'd worked so hard for all of these other unsatisfactory responses, and I hardly did anything at all. I said, aren't you going to show any resistance to me at all? I'm used to it. I'm good at it. So he did.
Please resist me.
I know. I hate to be treated so
Please
well.
please me, as the Beatles might have said.
Yeah, right. Not please me. So, anyhow, that's how it happened. And it's been
And where
a
are
perfect.
they based in D.C.? Where are they based?
Based in Greece, Corfu to be exact.
Corfu. Okay, that Greece.
He's an expat. He grew up in Chicago, and
okay.
excuse me, and made his way over there through very circuitous means. Thereby hangs another a long story.
But they
And
liked the book, and obviously. And
they did, and once again, no resistance, hardly any editing, which has never happened before. In fact, I'm always fighting with people, and I don't really like to sort of unclench my teeth, because you know that the other shoe is inevitably going to drop, and you're not going to be prepared for it. But the other shoe hasn't dropped yet, and he seems to be amenable to my suggestions. I've helped edit other books. He thanks me. When does that happen to you?
I don't know of that experience.
See? So,
Edited every day of my life, but
yes.
it's okay. I appreciate it.
Huh.
Mostly.
I have, mostly. I have the mostly feeling. I've read mixed feelings about some of it. I try to make things editor.
Depends on the editor. So.
Well, with this, I did fill in. The book was much shorter, and I thought, well, I need a bit here. So I put in a bit here.
Okay.
And put in a bit. There's a dream sequence. I thought, well, that would be fun, because I got to write a blues song in that, or a gospel song. That's what it was. But otherwise, it's pretty much, he didn't do anything to it. He's a good fellow that way. I recommend him
Right now.
that way.
Well, that's great. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. So,
Well,
any other questions? Really?
You've astounded them.
Well,
So
I want to take a picture of these looks. So did I
it
do?
off.
Damn! Can you just stay till I get it all? Ask some more questions, or if you have them. That's right. Nobody ever does this. I mean, authors never actually take pictures of their audience.
yes, they do. Clay
They're lucky.
Chapman does.
Really?
Yeah, they'll take pictures of the audience. They sure
Huh?
do.
Huh? For what reason?
For
what
their-
stated reason?
For their Facebook
For their
page,
archives.
For their blogs, archives. Yeah,
Well,
all
this
these
is
things.
this is private. I don't want to
What?
share this to anyone. I'm not sharing this. This is my own personal scrapbook.
Well, that's what
I want
Facebook
this
does.
dramatist
It's a public,
persony.
private Facebook.
So whenever I feel rejected, I may blow this up. It may be a poster size in my. Sorry, folks. They keep on. All right, here. Don't do anything. Don't go anywhere. Wait. Please don't go anywhere. None of you. Oh, stop! Hey, stop that! Stop that! Come back. There you are. Come back. Oh, hey. Oh, that's good. Do
Hold up
the.
your book.
Hey, I like that too. Like the motif. All right. Thank you, everyone. So no other.
Well, Brett,
Yes, sir.
thank you for.
Oh, thank
for
you.
being
Thank
here,
you, Harry. Thank you so
certainly.
much.
Thanks
Thanks,
for the
everyone.
book,
It is.
and thanks to Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, it
and
is
for
time for
hosting
book
it.
signing now. We are.
Okay.
We are. Do you want to sit to do that, or do you? What would you like to do?
I don't
It's
care.
fairly relaxed. So you just want to.
Oh, I'm fine.
Where you are.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
And
Present me with your
just
books.
just so everyone knows, thank you for supporting.
Yes.
Thank you for supporting programming at Fountain Bookstore. It's your purchases that makes it possible for us to continue to have live author programming, which was the dead author programming, which we tried for a while and didn't work out.
Huh. Like
Very
the logistics
unresponsive,
behind
have
that.
to get
Yeah,
them to
huh.
speak.
Yeah, it's very unrewarding.
Living, breathing writers.
Yeah,
So-
here-
so,
yeah,
yeah.
what a
Alive.
concept.
Alive.
Yes.
So if you remember us, if not today, to purchase some other time, and these make big gifts.
can. So they're selling more. I have one copy of my own, but I want to buy another one for the.
Oh yeah, he's got more.
What's the, it's 4 or 5,
4,
right?
5, 16.
16. Thank you.
I have one copy of my own, but I need to buy one.
God, thanks a lot for coming, John. I didn't think you'd
I like
come.
How long are you here?
I have a sick cat, so I've got to go back tomorrow. I'll just keep it here. Yeah, I'd like to.
Travel
Thanks.
safe.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Good to see you.
Same here. 2? Well, I don't know where they are. You expect me?
I just what?
Oh, they're over here. I'm sorry. Here. Hey, yeah, let's bring them over here. I'm going to get some more. Sorry, John. I'm going to bring them over here since I'm at the podium. I love that. I'll leave 2. Okay.
Yeah, they're all grown up and gone.
Wow. And one is for Katie.
Okay.